Hey guys, welcome to Module 3. I want to give you a little bit of an overview on the module. We're going to talk about social work ethics and values, and I know I'm a big dork, but this is one of my favorite topics in the class because it always lends to great discussion. Okay, all right. So some of the things we're going to be looking at is understanding social work ethics, which I have attached in the module. Knowing what the ethics are, the changes in the code of ethics. So there's been some revisions, and I've also attached that in the module so you can see. And it's got a highlighted copy with all the highlights in there showing changes to the code. Most of the changes center around technology. I mean, we live in a digital world that everything's at our fingertips. So a lot of that stuff has changed the way social work uh, has evolved. So those changes are reflected in those code of ethics changes that I've given. Um, the chapters in the book will also be very helpful in understanding ethics. And the ethical scenario assignment, which is one of the essays, and we do have two essays this week. We have two essays and two discussions, but I don't think the essays are going to be too much in one week. Or in the 2 week module, but I think we should be all right. But the ethical scenario is one of my favorites. We've got a scenario that we give you, and you have to identify the ethical issues in that scenario. Now, as far as formatting for this particular essay, um, you can give me this essay in any format that you choose. If you do a written essay, just try to get it in APA format. But if a chart works better for you to identify what code violation it was and why it was a violation, that's fine. If you want to give it in list format, I mean, however you can articulate it to me, in the best and most efficient manner possible is great. Um, the one thing I ask though is if you are indicating a part of the scenario that is violating a part of the code, put in the code what code section it is. That will help me be able to identify it a little bit more clearly because it can get really confusing for me really quick when I'm just seeing well it violates this code and that code. So if you just specifically give me the code, that will clear up all of that confusion. But yeah, whatever format you want to give it for this particular week, you can do that. If you want to do it in written format, please, you can just use your normal APA format. But if a chart or something of that nature works better, have at it. Also, there is a discussion about ethics in what sections you agree with and what sections you disagree with the most. Now, I know, we mentioned in the last module that we are a royally focused program in generalist practice. So, some of the major issues, and I want you to kind of be aware of when you're reading through the ethics, is dual relationships. That's a biggie in Appalachia, in the rural environment. I mean, that can be a biggie anywhere. It's just bigger because we are smaller, and a lot of us live in small towns with limited number of folks. You may be the only social worker in town. So when a client comes to see you, they may also be your pastor's daughter or something of that nature. So we have to learn how to navigate those really sticky situations. There are some clearer boundaries on some of it, but sometimes when you're in a rural environment, you may be the only social worker to deal with these particular issues. So you have to be able to set boundaries in order to keep those two roles separate. A general rule of thumb is you have to, if you know that person on a different level, you refer them to another social worker. However, in the rural environment, that's not always possible. You may, like I said, you might be the only one. So you have to learn how to set those boundaries and establish that with them and have that conversation with your client and say, okay, I know we have this relationship outside of here, but in this room, this is the expectation. These are the boundaries. Nothing you say here will go any outside of this room. Um, So setting those professional boundaries and understanding those dual relationships is very important. Also, sometimes inappropriate relationships become an issue in the rural environment somewhat more so than in others. Being involved in getting involved with your clients is always number one no-no. Or having a client that was a former sexual partner is also not considered appropriate. Those are some of the major issues that we have to deal with in the rural environment. So just keep that in the back of your mind on the way, when you're going through the assignment. Also, the other side of this is not only you learning ethics, is you exploring your own values, because as social workers, we find ourselves in all these ethical situations, but we have to also think about how our personal values can affect our ethics, because a lot of times we're with people at their most vulnerable, and it is difficult to separate your own feelings from the situation sometimes. I'm sure a lot of you have had that situation. If any of you work with CPS, you may not always agree with the way the mother has handled that child, but we can't let our own personal views on parenting interfere with the job at hand. Just as an example. So we have to clearly identify our own values and be aware of those. So, this discussion on identifying your personal values, this is not me just being, nosy or anything. This is an exercise for you to really think about those scenarios. So, there is an attachment in there that has some really kind of hot button issues that are very controversial. And what we're doing is looking at those those ethical situations and identifying your own personal values, and then thinking about the client you'll be working with. If they had an opposing view to you, how difficult would it be for you to work with that client? For example, if you do not condone abortion, you have very strong views against abortion, and you have a client that very adamantly wants to get an abortion, how would you work with that client? How would that affect your conversations with her? How would you make sure that your own personal beliefs didn't bleed into the situation? And how does the code of ethics help guide us with that? What do we have to kind of refer back to in the code to help us navigate those kind of sticky waters, and help pull us back? And also, it's important to know what situations that you cannot be impartial on. Are there certain things that you cannot, work with a client with an opposing view? I mean, a lot of folks have difficulty in working with sexual predators, people who have been convicted of child molestation or child pornography, those kind of things. A lot of us are parents. We have children. We have nieces and nephews and family, and sometimes it would be very hard for us to separate that, our personal beliefs on that, and to work with that client, because the client always knows. I mean, the client knows whether you're being genuine or not. People are very perceptive, and they know when you have a very different view, and even if you don't tell them. So knowing that and being aware of that is very important professionally. It can help us navigate those waters. If we know that we can't be impartial on certain things, we may want to work in different fields, because that's the great thing about social work. We can do all kinds of different things. We can work micro, meso, we can work in macro practice. We can do all kinds of different things. But knowing our values helps us navigate some of that, because some particular fields may not be for you. If you feel really strongly about addiction, and have difficulties sympathizing or empathizing with people suffering with addiction, it may not be the right niche for you to work in. You may be better to work in a different area. So understanding those values becomes very, very important in growing as a professional. And some of that's mentioned in the competencies, understanding our professional roles and understanding professional boundaries and how our ethics affect that. Our ethics and our values affect that. So, two kind of little different things, but they intersect very heavily in the ethics and our own values and how we weigh that out and exploring your own personal identity as a social worker. So, that's why I find this so exciting. I am excited to read all of your ethical scenario responses. I'm excited to read your responses about the evaluation of your identifying your personal values essay. I'm excited to read all that stuff. So I look forward to it. If you have questions or concerns about the module or any of the assignments, please feel free to reach out and let me know. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. Um, I hope you enjoy it. I hope that you really take the time to really think about it and explore your own values and the ethics and how they intersect. So good luck with Module 3.